I thought the worst part would be being excluded from Thanksgiving. I was wrong. The worst part was realizing they meant it. That message came in on a Tuesday morning. The subject line was blank. The text just said, "The cabin's been sold. Please don't make this harder." No greeting. No explanation. Just like that, the family cabin, our summers, my childhood, sold off like a used lawnmower. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Boston. Coffee still warm, snow starting to dust the window panes. And for a moment, everything froze, except my heart. I stared at the screen like it was a lie. Then I read it again. And again. The sender, my parents, Beth and Raymond Wells. People who taught me how to ride a bike, pack a suitcase, tie a roast, and apparently how to become invisible. Let me back up. I'm Harper Wells. I'm 33, a senior product designer for a tech firm most people haven't heard of but secretly rely on. I've paid my way since I was 17, graduated from UMass on scholarships, tips, and caffeine. I don't complain. I don't ask for help. I was taught that's what strong daughters do. My younger sister, Lena, is 5 years behind me and 5 steps ahead in our parents' eyes. She married well. She hosts brunch. She has matching luggage sets. Growing up, we shared bunk beds and birthday cakes. Now we share a silence. Well, I stay silent. She just doesn't notice. The cabin, it wasn't fancy. Peeling paint, creaky floors, that weird humming sound from the freezer that never stopped. But it was home. It was mine long before it was ever Lena's. And now it's someone else's completely. You'd think they'd tell me in person, or at least call. But no, because when you're the strong one, the put-together one, the doesn't need anything one, people assume you don't have a breaking point. But I do. And that message found it. Here's what I need you to know. This isn't a story about revenge. It's not a pity party either. It's about recognition. It's about waking up one day and realizing you've spent your whole life auditioning for a role that never even existed, hoping for applause that was never coming. It's about the silent grief of being forgotten in the spaces you held together for everyone else. And it's about what happens when the invisible daughter stops shrinking. So if you've ever felt like the extra chair, the afterthought, the emotional first responder no one checks on, this story is for you. If you've ever been left out by people who said they loved you only to discover they meant, long as you don't take up too much space, this story is for you. It's not what it seems. And if any part of you has ever wondered whether you're the problem, let me say this loud and clear, you're not. You were just never the favorite. And maybe, just maybe, that was your freedom in disguise. I didn't know it yet, but that Tuesday morning was the beginning of something bigger. It started with grief, but it would end in firelight, cinnamon, and a table no one could take away from me again. You can survive 1,000 small rejections until one lands so deep it rearranges your memory. That's what it felt like after the text about the cabin. I started remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. Not the loud moments. Those are easy. The quiet ones. The glances. The absence. Like the year Lena got mono and everyone tiptoed around the house like it was a shrine. Meanwhile, when I had pneumonia at 16, Mom left soup on my nightstand with a sticky note that said, "Reheat it too. Love you." Or when Lena forgot her speech at the senior banquet and Dad practically tackled the NC to stall. When I won my college debate championship, they sent a text. "Wow, impressive!" 2 words. No call. No visit. That's when I started learning to shrink. Not out of humility. Out of survival. Because in families like mine, the capable child becomes the convenient one. The less complicated one. The one you trust to handle disappointment alone. Let me tell you about Lena. She has this way of walking into a room like she's the headline, which she usually is. Lena is golden, literally, Blonde hair, designer bags, laughter like a magazine ad. She's the type who takes a selfie with a light, and it somehow gets reposted by the coffee shop. But it's not just charm, it's how she fits our parents' world. She married a venture capitalist. She throws charity galas. She has a golden retriever named Bentley and a baby named Georgia and a curated Instagram full of beige linens and toddler moccasins. Me, I have 3 plants. To survive, I wear black because I like it, not because it matches the kitchen. And I've spent most of my adult life explaining to people that I'm not mad, just quiet. The truth, I spent a long time trying not to resent Lena. Because resentment's ugly, and I didn't want to be bitter. But silence's silence can rot you from the inside out. And the more I stayed quiet, the louder the unfairness became. The first time I said anything, really said anything, was Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I brought my then boyfriend, Jonah. We'd been together for almost a year. I was nervous but excited. He brought wine, wore a sweater my mom would like, even learned everyone's names. We were seated at the folding table in the hallway, the kids section, right next to the utility closet. Lena's in-laws, front and center by the fireplace. 3 wine options, monogrammed place cards. When I mentioned my recent promotion to creative lead, my mom said, "That's great, honey. But let's not overshadow others. Lena's had a rough quarter." Jonah looked at me like he was watching someone drown in shallow water. Later that night, in the car, he asked, "Why do you let them treat you like furniture?" We broke up 2 months later. Not just because of that. But that night was a mirror I wasn't ready to look into. Because the hardest part about being the forgotten one is how easy it is to believe they're right. That maybe you are too much, too blunt, too distant, too independent, too unnecessary. But here's what I know now. Sitting in the middle of a quiet Boston apartment with snow tapping the glass, they didn't forget me by accident. They forgot me because I never demanded to be remembered. But that's about to change. Because while they've been planning holidays without me, I've been building something they don't even know exists. Something waiting in the snowy hills of Vermont. And for the first time in my life, they're going to have to knock to get in. Sometimes, the loudest transformation happens quietly, in the spaces where no one's watching. They thought I'd just disappear, that I'd nod, say, "Okay," and find somewhere else to sit while they sold off my childhood like it was clutter. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had already found my somewhere else. I didn't tell anyone when I bought the house in Vermont. Not out of spite, not out of secrecy, but because it was the first thing in my life that felt truly, entirely mine. I found it last winter, in a town so small the gas station also sold wedding cakes. The house was crooked, charming, absolutely freezing, and perfect. An old farmhouse with faded red siding and a wraparound porch that looked like it belonged in a movie where people actually talked to each other. The first time I stood in the entryway, snow melting off my boots, I felt it. That strange, quiet knowing in your chest, like something just clicked into place. It wasn't just a house, it was a reclaiming of space, a voice, of value. I had spent the last decade renting city apartments where the walls were thin and my presence felt thinner. Now I owned something with creaky stairs, hand-carved banisters, and a fireplace that smelled like cedar and memory. I didn't need anyone to clap for me. I just wanted to share it with people who saw me, really saw me. My original plan had been simple. Fix it up slowly. Maybe host a Thanksgiving next year, when the floors didn't threaten to swallow guests whole. But after the cabin, something in me shifted. I didn't want to wait anymore. I wasn't going to build another version of their table, just with better lighting and nicer wine. I was going to build something different. No power games. No passive-aggressive comments disguised as compliments. Just warmth and people who chose to show up. So I started planning. I made a list, not of family obligations, but of soul friends. People who never made me feel small. Top of the list. My old college roommate, Camille, who once stayed up all night helping me reformat a design portfolio after my laptop crashed. Then Marcus, my co-worker and unofficial big brother, who sends me playlists labeled things like, "You're worth more than their weird energy." Then Dana, a barista from my first job who I hadn't seen in years but still sends a birthday text every January 14th. Each name I wrote down felt like a stitch in something I didn't realize had been torn. This wouldn't be a guest list. It would be a sanctuary. I'd cook what I loved, not what was expected. There would be mismatched chairs, second-hand plates, and zero pressure to pretend. Just people. Real people. With full hearts and slightly burnt pie crusts. I opened a blank notebook, titled the page, "Thanksgiving, My Way," and beneath it, I wrote 3 words that felt like lightning. No permission needed. For years, I'd waited. Waited to be invited, included, validated. But not this time. This time, I'd be the one holding the door open. This time, the invitation would come from me. And the only requirement to enter: bring your whole self. Leave the masks at home. Because when you've been the invisible one long enough, you start to understand something deeply. Peace doesn't come from being seen. It comes from no longer needing to be. And in that little house tucked between snowy trees, I was finally ready to stop waiting for a seat. I was ready to build the whole damn table. It's funny, once you stop begging to belong, people start wondering where you went. A week after I sent the invitations, the responses started rolling in, one by one, like little lights turning on in the dark. Camille called first. "Vermont?" she said, laughing. "You've been holding out on me." "Of course I'll be there. You know I'll bring the wine. And probably a man I'll regret later." Next was Marcus. I already blocked off the weekend. He texted, "I'm bringing mac and cheese that'll make people cry. And yes, I'm staying in the room with the wood paneling. I don't care if it's haunted." Even Dana wrote back, "I didn't think you remembered me." I did. I always had. She was the first adult in my life who told me I was allowed to take breaks. That mattered more than she knew. My list wasn't long. Just enough for one big table, 2 crock pots, and enough blankets for everyone to nap after dessert. And then came the unexpected call. Lena's husband. When I saw his name on my phone, my stomach did a slow, careful flip. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me whispered, "Just listen." "Hey, Harper?" His voice was cautious, like he was stepping onto cracked ice. "I heard through Marcus about the lodge. About Thanksgiving." Silence stretched so wide I could feel the cold air between us. Then, "Lena doesn't know I'm calling. But she cried when she saw the message your parents sent you. She thought you'd be at Thanksgiving like always. And when you weren't, she just sat there, quiet, didn't even eat dessert." That gave me pause. Not because I suddenly believed she'd changed, but because for the first time in a long time, someone noticed my absence. "Would like to come," he said finally. "If there's room. If it wouldn't ruin anything." I didn't answer right away. Because here's the truth: there's a difference between forgiveness and access. I can forgive you and still not trust you in my space. I can wish you healing and still keep my boundaries intact. I didn't know if I was ready to share this new thing I'd built with the same people who made me feel like an outsider in my own life. But I also didn't want to recreate the same pattern in reverse. This wasn't a table built from spite. It was built from healing. And healing doesn't need to be loud, but it does need to be honest. So I told him the truth. There's space, but only if she understands. This isn't her stage. This is my space, and no one gets to steal the spotlight here." He paused, then said quietly, "That's fair. And I think she'll understand." After we hung up, I sat on the porch. The wind carried that kind of early winter hush, the one that makes everything feel sacred. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting to be chosen. I had already chosen myself. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally ready to choose who got to sit beside me. You never really know who sees you until you stop performing. The first guest arrived the day before Thanksgiving, just as the last of the golden leaves gave in to the wind. It was Camille, wrapped in a giant scarf the color of wine and dragging a suitcase that had one broken wheel and a sticker that read, "Not all who wander are lost, but I definitely am." "This place," she said, the second I opened the door, "smells like fresh start and cinnamon." I laughed and pulled her into a hug, and just like that, the lodge stopped being a dream. It became a memory in progress. Next came Marcus in a parka 2 sizes too big and arms full of food. I brought enough mac and cheese to feed a small cult. He grinned. Also, I used 4 kinds of cheese. Don't ask me to name them. I blacked out halfway through. By mid-afternoon, the house was alive. The fire crackled. Laughter bounced off the rafters. Music played low from a dusty Bluetooth speaker someone found in the pantry. It felt like breath, like exhale, like I had been holding my lungs hostage for 30 years and finally remembered how to let go. I watched them settle in, unpacking bags, pulling on slippers, testing pies, rearranging chairs without asking, like they belonged, because they did. And then I heard it, gravel crunching under tires. I froze. My heart did that anxious flutter thing, like it wasn't sure if it should brace for joy or impact. Jason's car. I knew it was his before I even saw it. It moved like someone trying not to intrude. I stepped out onto the porch, hands clenched inside my sleeves. The air was sharp, but not unkind. The car door opened. 2 small figures tumbled out. Aunt Harper, Lena's kids, Georgia and Theo. They rushed toward me with the unfiltered excitement only kids can manage. Their cheeks were pink, breath forming tiny clouds. "You have a swing," Georgia squealed. "And hot chocolate," Theo added. I didn't, but apparently that was now a priority. I hugged them tightly, then looked up. Lena stood next to the car, one hand on the door, the other gripping a pie tin like it was a peace offering. She looked different. Not broken. Not confident either. Just real. We stood there for a long second. Then she said, voice small, "Thanks for letting us come." I nodded. "Thanks for showing up." She stepped forward. Not a grand entrance. No speech. Just a quiet walk across the snow to the place I'd made mine. That night, we sat around the fire with mismatched mugs and leftover stew. No one asked who brought what. No one tried to outshine anyone else. We just existed. Together, Lena helped Camille wash dishes. Jason read stories to the kids upstairs. Marcus taught Georgia how to beatbox using an empty oatmeal tin. And I watched it all from the hallway, hand on the banister, heart fuller than I could remember. This was what I'd wanted all those years. Not a perfect holiday, not validation. Just presence, just real. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. Not because they'd remembered, but because I had. I remembered myself. And that was enough. Sometimes, peace arrives gently. Other times, it's interrupted by the people who taught you to live without it. The morning of Thanksgiving, I woke up before the sun, not from stress, not from noise, but because something in me felt still, settled. Like my body knew this day, this version of the holiday, would be different. I padded downstairs in thick socks, wrapped in a flannel robe. The fire was still smoldering. The house was warm, quiet. I made coffee in the old percolator I found tucked behind baking pans the day I moved in. The smell filled the kitchen, earthy, rich, grounding. Outside, snow had blanketed the trees, turning the whole backyard into something you'd only ever see on postcards. It was exactly what I had imagined, and still better. One by one, my guests began to stir. Camille came down first, hair in a messy bun, mascara still smudged from the night before. "Don't judge me until I've had caffeine," she said, reaching for a mug. Marcus followed, carrying a tray of scrambled eggs and the confidence of a man who believes cheese belongs in every dish. We played soft jazz, baked cornbread, and made name cards out of pressed leaves and twine. The kids helped fold napkins into swans. Jason chopped pears like it was his calling. Even Lena was different, quieter, attentive in a way I'd never seen. She helped with the table, took photos of the setup, complimented the pie crust like it was art. She didn't try to lead. She didn't dominate the space. She just helped, like a guest, not a queen. We were halfway through making salad when she walked over and asked "Do you need help with anything else?" I looked at her, really looked. For a second, she wasn't the girl who got everything handed to her. She was a woman, shoulders slightly hunched, fingers fidgeting with the corner of her sleeve. "You did something really beautiful here," she said. And she meant it. You can tell when people are just being polite. This wasn't that. I nodded. "Thanks," I said, then added, because I needed to. I wasn't okay with it, you know. All those years, I just didn't know how to say it. She exhaled, slow. "I know. I'm sorry." And it was weird, not magical, not a grand catharsis, just real, and real was enough, until my phone started buzzing, then Beth's, then Camille's, then Marcus's. We all paused. Uncle Paul looked up from his crossword. "You're all getting the same thing, huh?" I checked my screen. A message from my mother. "Where is everyone? We're supposed to be starting dinner. No one's here. Why isn't Lena answering?" Another message followed, this one bolder. "Are you with Harper? Did she plan something?" I froze. The room went still. Marcus looked at me, eyebrows raised. Camille walked over, her phone in hand. Same message. So did Jason. So did Lena. They didn't know. They hadn't realized what they'd done. Or maybe they had never believed I'd stop showing up. Lena looked at me. I nodded. She picked up her phone, dialed, and put it on speaker. "Hi, Mom." There was a pause on the other end. Then a voice, sharp, irritated. "Samantha, where are you? We've been waiting. Your father is furious." "We're in Vermont," she said calmly. "At Harper's?" Another long pause, dense with confusion. Then, "What do you mean? Harper's in Boston." She didn't come. I stepped closer to the phone. "No, Mom, I'm here. In Vermont. At my home." "Your what?" "My lodge. The one I bought last year." The next words were tight. Wounded, almost angry. "Why would you do this?" I kept my voice calm. Even, like I was explaining the weather. "Because you told me not to come. You asked for space. So I gave it to you." She started to respond, something defensive, something familiar. But Jason cut in. "For the record, we chose to be here. All of us. This isn't a protest. It's peace." Then my father's voice came through. Cold, clipped. "This is not how families act." I took a deep breath, held it, let it go. "No," I said. "It's not how your version of family acts. But this is how mine does." Silence. Then the line went dead. No more texts, no more questions. We stood there for a moment, the fire crackling quietly behind us. Then Grace, one of the cousins, broke the tension with a grin. "Well, that went better than expected." We all laughed. Loud, real, unfiltered. Not because it was funny, but because something had cracked open, and none of us were going back. That night, as I folded blankets in the den, Lena walked in holding something. A letter. My letter. The one I'd written to my parents weeks ago and never sent. "You should send this," she said. They won't read it. That's not the point, she replied. Send it for you. I held the envelope in my hand, and suddenly, I understood something I hadn't before. Speaking your truth isn't about making others change. It's about setting yourself free. Healing isn't loud. It's not glamorous. It looks like warmth and smells like cinnamon, wood smoke, and something you didn't think you'd ever have again, peace. 1 year later, almost to the day, I stood in the exact same kitchen, same window, same view, same smell of cloves and roasted squash. But I wasn't the same. The house had changed too. What started as a quiet rebellion had become a living, breathing thing. The lodge now held dozens of tiny moments folded into its walls, laughter echoing off the beams, tea stains on old quilts, the creak of the stairs that no one ever bothered to fix because everyone loved the sound. That winter, I got to know my life in ways I hadn't before. Lena and I talked more. Not every day, but when we did, it wasn't surface, deep. She stopped performing, and I stopped pretending I wasn't hurt. Somewhere in the middle, we found something new, sisterhood, not rivalry. Camille came back in the spring to help paint, and stayed 2 weeks binge, watching crime documentaries in her pajamas. Marcus brought his niece up in June, and they camped in the meadow out back. He told her, "This is Aunt Harper's house. It's where we go to remember who we are." And me, I found stillness. I started baking again. I took a pottery class. I slept in. I read books I never finished in college. I remembered how to be a person, without performance. For 11 months, my parents said almost nothing. A few texts here and there, a forwarded birthday meme. Thanks for the picture. When I sent one of the kids in the snow, I didn't chase it. I didn't explain. I didn't write a second letter. But then, in late October, it came. A letter, handwritten, 4 full pages, from my mother. Her handwriting looked smaller than I remembered, as if the words were afraid to take up space. It started simply, "Harper, I read your letter. I've read it more than once." She didn't make excuses. She didn't pretend it hadn't happened. She wrote about the ways she failed, the things she missed, the patterns she never questioned because they benefited her. There was no grand apology, but there was something deeper, something honest. "If there's still space at your table," she wrote, "we would be honored to sit beside you." I folded the letter, placed it in the drawer where mine had once lived, unread. But this drawer wasn't holding silence anymore. It held beginning, so I called, and I invited them. Not because I forgot, but because I had finally forgiven. They arrived the day before Thanksgiving, just like everyone else. My father got out first, holding my mother's suitcase. He looked smaller, older, but maybe softer too. When they stepped inside, there were no speeches, no tension, just awe. "You've created something extraordinary," my mom whispered. I smiled. "Thank you." Lena arrived an hour later with fresh pies and matching scarves for the kids. She hugged me tight, and that was all we needed. That night, the house filled again, like it had the year before. The same faces, the same long wooden table. But this time, something had shifted. My parents didn't sit at the head of the table. They sat in the middle, surrounded, equal. There were no monologues, no critiques, just plates passed hand to hand, stories told without filters, laughter that didn't need permission. After dinner, I stepped outside with a mug of hot cider. The stars shimmered against the black sky like tiny promises. The air smelled like snowed and cedar and newness. A minute later, my father joined me. We stood in silence, side by side. Then he said, quietly, "You were always strong, Harper." But I didn't know strength could look like this. I nodded. Because here's the thing, sometimes love doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't storm through the door begging for forgiveness. Sometimes it shows up with hands in its pockets and eyes on the ground. Late. Uncertain. That Thanksgiving, I didn't just reclaim a holiday. I reclaimed my name, my worth, my space, not as someone waiting to be chosen, but as someone who chose herself. We ended the night with a photo by the fire. Like always, only this time, I didn't stand off to the side. This time, they placed me in the center. Not because I demanded it, but because it was finally clear to everyone that I had built this, piece by piece, choice by choice, not out of revenge, but out of restoration. And if you're still listening, if you've ever felt like the extra seat, the one who stays late to clean, the one they always forget to thank, I want to say this to you as clearly as I can: you are not invisible. You are not too much, and you do not need to earn your place. If no one makes room for you, build your own damn table. Invite the people who see you, the ones who stay, the ones who ask how you're doing, and actually wait for the answer. Because sometimes the family we need is the one we build ourselves. And in that building, we find something better than approval. We find home.